Thank you very much. Thank you.
He was on the casino floor.
That's him, with Emhoff, 12 hours.
What's going on?
The film begins on day 2 with Beth Emhoff, a businesswoman, talking to a former lover, hinting at a planned meeting. He suggests staying in touch via email, but Beth clearly feels unwell. Meanwhile, a deadly illness spreads worldwide. A young model dies in her apartment, others show symptoms like coughing and sweating, and a man loses his sight, wanders into the street, and is hit by a car. On day 3, the illness worsens, spreading rapidly worldwide. Alan, a blogger, tells a colleague the disease is far more serious than it seems and will soon dominate the news, but she remains skeptical, citing a lack of solid proof beyond a single video. On day 4, Mitch, Beth's husband, is called to pick up his stepson Clark, who has a high temperature. That evening, Beth collapses and has a seizure. Mitch rushes her to the hospital, but doctors can't save her. Devastated, Mitch is further shocked when he returns home to find Clark lifeless in his bed.
Sweetheart,
8:05 to 8:08, Beth gets into seizure. On day 5 in Geneva, Switzerland, a group of officials at the WHO convenes for a meeting to discuss the growing crisis. However, all they have are statistics and fragmented data, leaving them puzzled as they struggle to understand the nature and cause of the mysterious outbreak. Beth's body is brought in for an autopsy, and as 2 doctors begin the examination, one of them becomes unsettled. Noticing something unusual, he quickly orders the other doctor to stop and calls for additional doctors, unsure of how to proceed further. Dr. Ellis Cheever, a lead official at the CDC, instructs Dr. Aaron heads to Minnesota and investigates the growing outbreak. Meanwhile, Mitch is still at the hospital, trying to process everything when his daughter Jory unexpectedly arrives. Shocked by what her father is going through, she asks about his condition. Mitch, worried for her safety, urges her to return to her mother, but Jory refuses, explaining that her mother is with someone else, and insists on staying by her father's side. Dr. Aaron meets with several government officials to discuss the outbreak. She explains that the disease is likely transmitted through both surface contact and respiratory droplets, meaning it can spread by touching objects contaminated by infected individuals. At that point, 47 people have been affected, with 8 fatalities. Despite this alarming information, the officials hesitate to make a public announcement, fearing that it could cause widespread panic. At a CDC Biosafety Level 4 lab, Doctors Ali and David investigate the disease, using samples from Beth's body, but admit they're struggling to find enough information. They hope that researcher Sussman might uncover more. Meanwhile, as Dr. Sussman leaves his lab, Alan, a persistent blogger, approaches him about the outbreak. Lon refuses to answer, reminding Alan that inquiries must go through formal channels. 2032 to 2035 further research at BSL-4. In another part of the CDC, Dr. Cheever is in his office when a representative from the Department of Homeland Security meets with him. They express concerns that the virus might be a bioweapon, prompting an in-depth discussion about the potential threat. As the epidemic worsens, schools close as the disease spreads, Dr. Aaron takes charge, tracking everyone Beth contacted. Despite resistance from local officials, she secures resources to start a public health response. She then focuses on locating Barnes, who had close contact with Beth and is now symptomatic. Meanwhile, Mitch shares details about Beth and their time before her illness. The doctor reveals Beth was in Chicago before Minneapolis, sparking Mitch's suspicions since her former lover, John Neal, is in Chicago. Mitch pushes for more information, but the doctor refuses, leaving Mitch desperate for answers. Later, Dr. Ali briefs the Dr. Cheever, explaining that the virus is a hybrid of pig and bat sequences. She presents a model showing how the virus attaches to its host, identifying it as a novel virus with a mortality rate in the low 20s. Concerned about the risks, Cheever instructs her that only Biosafety Level 4 labs should handle the virus moving forward. Following this doctor, Ali contacts the Dr. Sussman, ordering him to stop his research on the virus. This infuriates Sussman, who is making progress in understanding the disease and is frustrated by the sudden halt in his work. On day 8, Dr. Cheever announced that cities like Minneapolis, Chicago, Los Angeles, Boston, and Salt Lake City are affected, with the virus expected to spread further. During a press briefing, he responds to reporters with a sense of urgency.
And Salt Lake, we expect that.
Later, Dr. Cheever and Dr. Alley joined a video call with other experts to discuss the rising cases, 8,000 to 9,000 confirmed, with projections of 267,000 more soon. The virus kills every cell in animal tests, and despite their efforts, no vaccine or treatment is available yet. Meanwhile, Dr. Leonora is in Hong Kong, investigating Beth's movements in an attempt to locate Ground Zero. Accompanied by Sun Feng, she follows the trail and eventually discovers that Beth had visited a casino. Leonora then requests the casino security footage to track her activity. Dr. Cheever learns that Dr. Sussman defied his orders and continued working on the virus in a BSL-3 lab. Remarkably, Sussman succeeds in growing the MEV-1 virus in the lab, marking the first step toward developing a vaccine. Faced with no other options, Cheever is forced to place his trust in Sussman's progress. On day 12, Alan, the blogger, has a conversation with a man looking to capitalize on the crisis, boasting that he was the first to notice the bus video. Alan, however, shifts the conversation, pointing out that 2 million unique visitors are searching for the truth about the outbreak. He then mentions forsythia as a potential cure, though its validity remains questionable.
You tried antibodies and immunological knockout lines like we did, but the key
Erin, along with her assistant Dave, begins setting up makeshift hospitals at several stadiums, preparing for the surge in infections. However, they are met with opposition from a group of locals, complicating their efforts. Meanwhile, Jory, Mitch's daughter, is about to open the door when a neighbor approaches. Mitch immediately intervenes, stopping her, unwilling to risk any exposure to the virus. Doctor. Leonora continues her investigation using security footage and discovers that Beth had extensive physical contact with others, leading her to suggest that the virus likely originated in Hong Kong. However, her theory is met with resistance, with others dismissing her claims, arguing that the virus is too microscopic to be traced through surveillance footage. On day 14, Doctor, Erin begins showing symptoms of the illness and falls seriously ill. Despite her condition, she contacts the apartment management to help control the spread of the virus. She later informs the Dr. Cheever that she is infected, mentioning her high fever as evidence. In Hong Kong, Leonora completes her investigation and shows Sun Feng more footage of Beth. Sun Feng, however, becomes increasingly agitated, suspecting that the Americans and French have already developed a cure but are withholding it from China. As Leonora prepares to return to Geneva, Sun Feng and his team kidnap her, believing that by holding her, they can ensure they receive the cure once it's discovered. Doctor. Cheever secretly calls his wife, Aubrey, urging her to leave for Chicago and then doctorive to Atlanta. He sternly warns her not to tell anyone and to travel in her own car. Unbeknownst to him, security guard Roger overhears the entire conversation. Later, Aubrey slips and tells a friend how serious the disease is. By day 18, panic escalates as people rush to buy forsythia, a supposed cure. Long lines form, but chaos erupts when it becomes clear that supplies are running out, sparking violence among the crowd. The city descends into turmoil as desperate people clash over the limited doses. Meanwhile, Mitch, with his daughter Jory, warns her not to touch anything as they attempt to leave the state. However, a security officer informs him that the borders have been closed by the government due to quarantine restrictions. Elsewhere, Alan distributes flyers claiming that the CDC is lying. On his way, he encounters a woman who pleads for help, explaining that she's been unable to find food at the store and has suffered a seizure. She offers him money to buy food, but Alan assures her that he will get it for her and urges her to return home. In a grim turn of events, Doctor, Erin succumbs to the disease. The man next to her in the makeshift hospital is shivering and asks for more blankets, but Erin has already passed away, unable to overcome the illness. Dr. Cheever appears in a live debate with Alan, a freelance journalist, where the conversation quickly becomes heated. Alan accuses the government of hiding the cure, claiming that therapies like forsythia have already proven effective. Their debate intensifies, with both men clashing, and Cheever finally declares that Alan is spreading misinformation, which he argues is even more dangerous than the virus itself. On day 21, doctors David and Allie discover that the virus has mutated, making it far more contagious than before. They have been testing potential vaccines on monkeys, but none of the animals have survived. Dr. Cheever later announces that the mortality rate now ranges between 25% and 30%, depending on the individual's health condition. With the new strain, each infected person is expected to spread the virus to 4 others, compared to 2 previously. By day 26, the security personnel announced that the food supply has run out, causing the public to erupt in violence. That evening, Mitch witnesses a gunshot from his neighbor's house. When he attempts to call emergency services, he finds the lines are overwhelmed and no help is available. On day 29, Mitch ventures to his neighbor's house, finding a gun which he takes back to his own home, realizing the increasing threat not just from the virus, but from people around him. Later, he sees his daughter Jory playing on the ice with her crush and Dr. Yu. As Dr. Yu leans in to kiss Jory, Mitch intervenes, stopping him and sternly warning him to return home, unwilling to take any chances. Meanwhile, Dr. Allie takes a bold step by inoculating herself with the experimental vaccine. She then visits her infected father, and when she removes her mask, her father urges her to stop, worried for her safety. Allie reassures him that she's vaccinated, bringing relief and happiness to her father. As Allie remains unaffected by MEV1, the vaccine is declared a success. Production begins, and the FDA accelerated approval, but the WHO estimates it will take a year to distribute enough vaccines to meet global demand.
The WHO estimates that it could take nearly a year to manufacture.
By day 131, chaos peaks when a thief breaks into Dr. Cheever's house, searching for the vaccine. Aubrey, his wife, is home and insists she doesn't know where it is. When Cheever returns, he finds her unharmed, and she assures him there was no physical contact. Despite the vaccine's success, Alan continues spreading doubt to his millions of followers. His efforts are halted when he's arrested for conspiracy and securities fraud, but his follower quickly bails him out, allowing him to resume his misinformation campaign. On day 133, the CDC begins distributing the vaccine through a lottery system based on birth dates. By this time, the death toll has soared to 2.5 million in the US and 26 million globally. Jory, Mitch's daughter, is frustrated when she learns she'll have to wait another 144 days to receive the vaccine, leaving her angry and anxious. Meanwhile, Sun Feng continues to hold Dr. Orantes captive, using her as leverage to secure vaccines for his village. The WHO eventually provides the village with vaccines, but they turn out to be fake. Once Orantes is released, she discovers the truth and rushes to warn the village about the placebo vaccines. Dr. Cheever, although able to secure vaccines for himself and his wife, chooses to give Roger's son Anthony his dose instead. He explains to Roger that Anthony will be protected while he can't provide the vaccine bracelet. That evening, Cheever finally vaccinates his wife, Aubrey. By day 135, Alan is bailed out by one of his loyal followers, and society slowly returns to normal. Public spaces are gradually reopening, but only for those who possess the vaccine bracelet, marking a new stage in the fight against the virus. The movie ends by showing the virus's origin. A bat, displaced by Emhoff's company in China, drops an infected piece of banana that a pig eats. The pig is later slaughtered, and a chef in Macau transmits the virus to Beth with a handshake, bringing the story back to day 1. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Watch our next videos on the screen, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you on the next one.